Yeah. Um, so tell me a little bit about what your work is, what you're doing now.
Okay, well, I'm an attorney with U.S. Housing and Urban Development, and part of what I do is I help close multi-million dollar loans on multifamily properties. Some of them involve affordable housing, some of it is market rate, but we also close multi-million dollar loans on healthcare facilities as well. So I serve as the closer on the federal government side.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's very important work.
Yes.
Tell me more about where you grew up and your educational background before you came to Northern.
Okay. Yeah, I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. And I attended Detroit Public High Schools, Dwyer Elementary, Sherrod Middle School, and then Murray Wright High School. And in Murray Wright High School, my track was more of a general education. I wasn't on a college preparatory, track or anything. I learned later that, that was available per se, but I didn't know. And what was interesting growing up, Dan, is my mother's goal for all of her kids, because I come from a family of six, and I'm the middle one. My mother just wanted us to graduate from high school because in my neighborhood where I grew up, inner city Detroit, graduating from high school was a big deal because most of the kids who grew up in my neighborhood did not graduate from high school. So that was one of the requirements for my mom. She says, if you're going to stay in my house, eat my food, sleep in the bed, I provide shelter. Your only job is to graduate from high school. So that was the mission.
Wow. So what neighborhood did you grow up in Detroit?
Well, several neighborhoods, but the last neighborhood I grew up in on Rosa Parks Boulevard,
Wow.
and it's not too far from Henry Ford Hospital, Motown Theater, Motown, the museum now, and everything. But that's considered the west side.
I guess the next question is, why did you choose to come to Northern then? What was it about the place or the school itself that made you want to come here?
Well, what is interesting is before I arrived on campus, the very first time I didn't know anything about, I had not, gone to a campus visit or anything. The story behind that is I was a had a Sunday school teacher. When I was a senior in high school, she pulled me to the side and she asked, what are you doing when you graduate from high school? And I told her I was going to go to the Navy, and I was in the delayed entry program. And I just wanted to get off the streets of Detroit and, be able to, make some money and send it back and help out my mother with my other siblings. And I remember her telling me, have you ever thought about going to college? And I said, no, not really. The only thing I know about college is I'm a big college football fan. So I really enjoyed following Michigan football. But that was about the extent I knew about college. And she said, you should really think about going to college. You come to Sunday school prepared. You speak up in class. And you're very studious. And I think that you would do very well. And she said, and if things do not work out in college, you can always go back to the military. And I said, okay. So I ended up applying for all the schools in Michigan, including Northern. Now, what made Northern's application stand out is Northern had this application back in 1984. It was like a yellow gold application with green writing. It really stood out. And then and there was a tree as well. There was a tree on the application, and then also Northern had was also that if you applied, you did not have to pay for the application fee. It was that was waived. It was free, free in other words. Whereas the other schools you had to receive a waiver, I think, or a fee waiver if you couldn't pay the $10 or $20 back then. So I ended up sending off the application, didn't think anything about it. And then in January of 1985, out of nowhere, my mom hands me a letter, and it's from Northern Michigan. I open it up, and the letter indicates, congratulations, Alphonso Eason, you have been accepted to Northern Michigan. Now, by the way, I don't have that letter. I would love to receive a copy of that letter if I can ever find it. If I can ever find it. But it said that, congratulations, you have been accepted to Northern Michigan. And based on my mother's financial status, the university offered me a Pell Grant, a national direct student loan, and then college work study. And I had to commit to the college work study in order to sort of make the financial aid package work. So then I talked to my mother about it, and she said, "So what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, wow, this is an opportunity to go to college." And again, I didn't know anything about Northern Michigan, had done no research or whatsoever. But I kind of found that as sort of a divine appointment, if you will, intervention. And I accepted it, and I think it was $50. My mother gave me $50 to pay to go to the orientation, which started, I think, the week before classes officially started. I think, if I remember it right. And then that was it. I sent it in. Sent in the application, the fee, and prepared to arrive to Northern Michigan. And the first time I showed up on campus, remember taking a Greyhound bus all the way from Detroit in August. I think that was August of 1985. And I could not believe that you could ride on the Greyhound bus for 14 hours and still end up in the same state.
And you weren't even to the end yet.
No, I mean that was such a long bus ride, but that was my introduction. I remember the NMU vans picked us up from the Greyhound bus station in Marquette, dropped us off on campus, and Halverson Hall was my first hall,
Yeah.
and then that was it. That was sort of how things started. So no plan, no research per se, just sort of an opportunity. I kind of saw it as a divine appointment, if you will.
That's great. So what were your first impressions of Northern when you came here?
I found Northern to be I like the pace of Marquette, the city of Marquette, and I like Northern as well. I mean, I was so focused on doing well in school to where I was just so busy. I mean, I really enjoyed the pace. I enjoyed going to my classes, the residence hall. Um, the library. I spent a lot of time at I think it's the Olson Library.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of time at the library there. So for me, it was a nice transition for me, if you will. It was just, it was a good fit.
Did you find a really good support system at Northern when you came here? I mean, were there other students, organizations that you got involved in that helped kind of make that transition a positive thing?
Yes, I found some really good support systems. I ended up joining a fraternity, predominantly African American fraternity by the name of Kappa Alpha Psi, which actually founded there at Northern Michigan. I think May 2nd, 1968 was our chapter was founded there, but the chapter had gone through deactivation until it was reactivated the time I was there. So I kind of found the fraternity to be very supportive. But what I really found very supportive was from the faculty and staff there. I'll talk about someone in particular. Paul Merck used to work in financial aid back then. I remember when I would go a couple of, when it was time to go back to school, and when we would go to the window to the counts to say how much money is owed, I'd be maybe $400, $500, $600, $700 short. And one day, one of the persons behind the window said, "Why don't you go up and talk to this gentleman named Paul Merck?" So, I go upstairs and I sit down, introduce myself and talk to Mr. Merck. And he's such a nice guy. And what he would do is he asked me whether or not if I enjoyed going to school at Northern. I told him I did. And then he would turn around and, on his computer, and he would be typing in keys, and he would talk to me at the same time. And I kind of figured that, one, he was looking to check out my grade to make sure I was making positive progress.
Probably.
Secondly, he always found me some money. He always was able to find me some money. He just wanted to know, did I want to be at Northern Michigan? And I was always so supportive of that, because other than the $50 that my mother gave me for orientation, to show up from orientation, she didn't give me any more money after that. Everything I earned, or I was received a grant, or, Mr. Merck, intervening to, assist me. And it's always a bridge after a bridge after a bridge after a bridge. And it allowed me to walk from my freshman year through a graduation from Northern.
So with regards to academic rigor, how did Northern, was it difficult? Did you find it easier than you thought it would be? What was the challenges or that you faced?
Well, I certainly had to work hard at Northern. When I first showed up, they gave us all a test, and the test sort of made a difference where you ended up at. So I ended up having to take some remedial courses. I ended up taking basic composition, reading improvement, and I want to say beginning algebra. So with that in mind, and those classes they did not count towards the credits you needed to graduate. So
Right.
I not only had to take those classes, but also, the basic load back then, I think it was 12 credits, 12 to 15 credits or so. So yeah, I found it to be, at least challenging, for me. I just put the work in, like I said, I spent a lot of time at the library and a lot of time talking to my professors and just really wanting to do well at Northern.
No, I came to Northern at the very same time, that fall of 1985. And I think I can safely say that of all the guys that I started college with that fall, maybe half of them were serious students and half were here just because they didn't know what else to do. And most of them, some didn't even last to the next semester, some, maybe a year or two. I was in a fraternity my first year, I didn't stay in it. And the same thing, the graduation rate was not real good. Was that your experience, with your friends, whether they be in the dormitories, whether they be in the fraternity, were you kind of unique in that sense that you were taking it very seriously, or was, I don't know if I'm what the question is really, but that was kind of my experience.
Okay. Again, I like to call it the divine appointment or fortuitous. I was walking in the hall, the first couple of weeks of school, and there was a gentleman playing Denise Williams. I like Denise Williams' music and Tina Marie. So I heard it. So I knocked on his door and I introduced myself. Well, he's also from Detroit, African American, and also in my fraternity. So, but then he wasn't. And what I noticed, I sat down and I talked with him. And then this guy was so smart. I was like, wow. And actually, Northern had awarded him a National Merit Scholarship. And then he was also there on a ROTC scholarship. So he was sort of like my role model right off the way, right away. And then he said that, well, I'm here, I'm on a ROTC scholarship. When I'm done, I have to serve my country. And but he wasn't paying anything for school, whereas I had the grants and the college work study. And I made up in my mind at that time, out of nowhere, I said, well, when you graduate from Northern, I'm graduating from Northern. And it was just like I made it. That he became my focus and my goal. I said, when you graduate, I'm graduating from Northern. And you know what ended up happening, Dan, is that I did end up graduating before him, even though we graduated on the same day. But they call my name first because it starts with E, and his name ends in V.
That's awesome. What year did you graduate?
1989.
So you graduated, you did it in 4 years.
Yes.
Yeah, I did the 5-year plan.
Okay.
I wasn't as serious as you my first couple of years at Northern. I took a semester off too, so I stretched it out. I did the 5-year plan, but you did. You were unusual, man. Not a lot of people like me did the 5-year plan. My wife did it in 4. Well, I graduated in 90 with a lot of guys who I started with.
Okay.
So, and other folks too. Well, that's awesome. I mean, you were really motivated. You really saw an opportunity. And were you right from the get-go a political science major?
Yes, right from the get-go, I know I wanted to do political science, and because I had interest in going to law school then, so that had sort of developed. Law school was a possibility, and my understanding was political science was probably the best undergraduate degree to have as a background for law.
Why did you decide you wanted to go into the law? I mean, what was it about it that drew you to it?
Well, I always thought that I would return to Detroit and one day serve as on the Detroit City Council. That was sort of my my goal, my thought, at some point is that I thought that it would be really nice to serve as a Detroit City Councilman and really try to make a difference in the city. And I thought that having a legal background with the skill set would be very valuable as a city councilman.
Mhm. So, who were some of the faculty members in political science that you remember and made an impact on you?
Okay, well, Dr. John Ashby, he was the pre-law advisor, and he made quite the impression on me because I remember when I first met with him, because he would have, if I remember right, every semester you had to meet with him and talk about your grades and how you were doing. And a couple of things that really stand with me about Dr. Ashby. One, he was the one that helped set up an internship for me when I was at my after my sophomore year. I interned with Detroit City Council President Marion Mahaffey in Detroit. Great internship.
Wow.
But I think he had contacts with that office and was able to set that up for me. Something else he did for me, and I'm gonna show you this real quick, Dan, and I still have it. This is a picture
Oh,
of Thurman Marshall.
yeah.
He gave me this picture way back when because I told I was assigned to him because of pre-law, and he gave that to me, and that really served as inspiration for me through the years. And when I was in law school, just remembering, just sort of having that photograph, just kind of kept that in mind for me of the road that had been paved, and that it was possible for me to become a lawyer if that's something I really wanted to do. And then upon graduation, Dr. Ashby and um, staff member named Ruth Rugby Barons. I'm not sure if I'm
Oh,
pronouncing
yeah, yeah,
her name.
yeah. Ruth Rutherford Barons, yeah.
Yes. She was such a beautiful spirit person, so encouraging for me. But they purchased this book for me as well.
Oh, wow.
Simple Justice, and in it they penned to Alphonso Eason, congratulations on your many achievements as a student at Northern Michigan University. We hope this book we hope this book will serve as a guide for your future career. Ruth Barons and John Ashby. Just beautiful. I mean, I was, yeah, so it was, yeah, so I'm sorry, Dr. Ashby. And then the second person, and uh, he wasn't in political science, but he was my basic composition instructor, Dr. David Goldsmith. Now, Dr. David Goldsmith, he was one of the first classes I had that first semester, and I would go in. I really worked hard, in the class. I remember one day, Dr. Goldsmith pulled me to the side, and he just wanted to know. He says, Alfonso, what do you want to do when you graduate from Northern? And I told him that I want to become a lawyer. And he said, okay. He said, well, Alfonso, let me tell you something. If there's anyone that can become a lawyer, you most certainly can because you work. I mean, I see how hard you work. He told me that he would see me when I would come to class sometime, I would turn sideways into my chair. And part of that is that allowed me to stay awake because sometimes I'll be up so late, studying and preparing. I'm tired because that was the first class. I want to say that was my 8 o'clock class. So I would like turn sideways in my chair just to stay awake. And he says that, I see you working hard, on the lessons. You really want to, get this writing thing down. But he said, let me tell you something though, because of your educational background, you're going to have to really work hard because we have a writing requirement at Northern that even if you pass all your classes, a lot of students get caught up on that writing requirement. And if you don't pass that, you will not graduate from Northern with a degree. And he committed to me that I'm going to help you with that. I'm going to help you pass that exam because, but you got to put the work in. And I just took from him just the encouragement because he could have easily said, Dan, based on your educational background, you're in this remedial course. I don't think so. He did tell me, he said, many of your classmates will not be coming back because most of them will not pass this class or put the work in to pass the class. But I believe that you can do it. and I will be supportive of you. And you know what he did? The first time I took that writing requirement, I was unsuccessful. I
Mhm.
remember he coming to me telling me you were unsuccessful, but keep working at it, Alfonso. So I went home that following summer, and what I did is I went to my I had my brother was in the was he well I think he must have been in high school then, but I took his 8th grade English book and I went through the whole book recreating the whole writing process from verb to subject and everything agreeing and just sort of understanding the mechanics of writing because for whatever reason I did not understand it prior to coming to Northern, but I really went home that summer. I would go up to the library in the summertime, and that's where my brother and I spent our time in the library, me trying to overcome this writing challenge. And you know, the next time I took it, I passed it. And Dr. Goldsmith was one of the first persons to come up and tell me, congratulations. I mean, just a wonderful man, wonderful man.
That's a great story. And it's one of those things about Northern that I think is so true is that the relationship that students have with their faculty members is really different than a lot of other universities. Let's say if you had gone to Michigan State or University of Michigan, do you think you would have had that kind of a personal attention from a professor? You
You
know,
know, yeah, you know, without being there, I don't know. I can just only just like to speak for Northern. You know, I would have to say that, Dr. Ashby didn't have to take the time to really, what I say, support me like that. But he did. He took it upon himself and he put his name out there on the line for me to get the internship with the council, with the Detroit council president. And that's what I liked about Northern. It almost appeared to me that if you were willing and you showed effort and you really wanted to take advantage of everything at Northern, I think people will come out and assist you along the way. That's sort of what I felt about my attendance at Northern Michigan. If you were willing and you put forth an effort, people will be there to grab your hand and move you along.
what are some of your favorite memories from attending Northern? I mean, orientation was a lot of fun that one summer, I know, but I'm sure there were a lot of other experiences that you had that you remember fondly.
Yeah, I'll say academic one was I also in that first semester I had introduction to political science,
Uh-huh.
and
Did you
and
have Neo Drag for that one?
I think
George?
I forgot his name, but yeah,
I
yeah.
think we were in that class together.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that must have been the one. That must have been the one. But what was interesting about that class, that class let me know that I was in the right spot. Really, I really enjoyed the work. I enjoyed the reading and everything. I know one time we had a test, and he used to tell us what the grades were, at least the high grades. And one of the tests, I had received an A, and it was interesting because whoever the professor was, he announced everyone else's grades and he said, but the student here who had the top grade for this particular exam is Alphonso Eason. Now I'm not sure how shocked the rest of my class members were, but I was shocked. so so when I looked at it, they gave me the confidence to say, yep, you can do this. You can do this. You can do this. And I really worked hard in the class, and then I ended up receiving an A- in the class. But I think that was one of those moments to say that my Sunday school teacher, she saw something and told me about it, and then I tried to follow through on it, and some of that fruit was starting to bear this to show me that there is you can do college work. You can do college work.
Well, I think that's one of the things we talk about with Northern and the conversations we've had with people. In fact, we've done a whole section on Northern's right to try policy,
Hmm.
which they started in the 60s, which was literally anybody has a right to try college.
Wow.
And
Huh.
we'll let the chips fall where they may. And like when we were there, that policy wasn't a stated policy anymore at Northern, but they still pretty much were giving people an opportunity who probably in high school were not particularly good students.
That's right.
And but what has come out of those conversations is people telling the same story you just told, that people gave them a chance not only to, go to college, but to excel and to prove to themselves that they could do this, and so, yeah, it's like, they came here, they weren't serious students, but they found themselves here and they found what they were good at. And they found also encouragement. And it's such a common story. It's great to hear that.
Oh, wow. Great. Great.
Time and time again, that's what we hear from people is, I didn't know what I wanted. I was not a good student, etc. I came to Northern and the light switch was flipped for me. And now I run a company, or, I'm a professor. So besides academics, what were some of the experiences you had that you remember fondly from coming to Northern?
Leadership was next. Wow. I had, that's where Dr. Behrens was so helpful in, but, I was a resident assistant for 2 years. My first hall was Grease Hall, Land's End.
That's where we are.
Is that right? Okay.
My office is in Grease Hall, and
okay.
The center I run is in the common rooms of Grease Hall. We took it over to be the museum.
Okay.
The Heritage Center is located in Grease Hall.
Oh, wow. Wow. Grease Hall. I remember we used to have a gray sweatshirt with kind of like a dark blue writing, a GRIES. Wow, what a wonderful experience. It gave me an opportunity. Well, one, it sort of worked out because that paid for my room and board. So so again, that was another way of me supplementing, making sure financially I was taken care of. But I actually received more than I could bargain for as a leader, and gave me an opportunity to stand before my peers, gave me confidence. I remember working with the student government in the hall, and then our sister in, I want to say that was Esprit de Corps. That was on the other side. So we worked with the RA there, planning programs together. Shelley was my hall director. I forget her last name now because she got married. But she was just so encouraging. And I remember I used to come down to the meetings, and it was great because all the hall, all the residents assistants were from different places. I remember Terry was from Nebraska, and she used to always talk about Nebraska, and I had no concept of Nebraska until I moved to Kansas. Now I understand what you're talking about. And we had another guy from, I want to say, Connecticut. I think someone was also from the Upper Peninsula, but we were from all over, and then of course I'm from Detroit, so we brought our experiences, our perspectives as resident assistants, which I think helped not only us individually, but also help us with the students that we were charged with, if you will. So that was just a great experience. I would show up earlier to school in order to do the room inventory, stay after everyone left to shut it down. Just really excelled as a leader, and that really did a lot for my confidence as well. And then a part of that, what kind of ended up happening is 2 awards I was awarded while I was at Northern Michigan. The first one was the Most Outstanding Black Collegiate Award, 1987, 1988, and I have it here. I still have it, Dan.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
So that was in 87, 88. And then the award that I received upon graduating from Northern was the Board of Control Student Achievement Award.
Wow.
And that's here. And if I remember right, they used to engrave your name on the different awards, because they had one for male and one for female for this one. And I was selected for this one for the male. And that was, they had a banquet. I remember having banquets for both of those. And that was just, very special time, recognizing leadership, my leadership ability. So that was great. That was great.
So did you have any negative experiences at Northern? Especially, I don't want to push this too hard, because it may just be an assumption, but especially being a Black student at Northern or in Marquette, I mean, was that at times a challenge?
You know, for me, I was so busy, I didn't really even, it wasn't really something that I even thought about all that much, really, because I was so busy between trying to keep up in my classes and my leadership activities. I just didn't have time to think about it, all that much. I would say that, the only time that maybe I thought about it is when the students would leave. And then sometimes what I would do is I would stay and earn money cleaning up cleaning up the residence hall or whatever. Back then, I think it was like 335 an hour or something like that.
Mhm.
So I would stay behind. So maybe the isolation to a certain degree was maybe something that had to be overcome. But at some point, I ended up purchasing a bicycle because there was a nice bicycle shop that wasn't too far from the university that you could
Yeah.
walk to. And I ended up purchasing a bicycle, so that gave me a chance to actually ride around Marquette, Michigan, which is beautiful. I mean, I assume the area is still beautiful.
Okay.
Presque going out there, riding my bike all around town. So I ended up just finding things to do, if you will. So I guess I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it. And then, like I said, at some point I did join Kappa Alpha Psi, my fraternity brothers. So that provided a cultural dimension for me that I was familiar with. But as for Marquette as a place, I just really enjoyed my time, living there, if you will. I thought the pace was right for me. And again, such a beautiful place. In spring, summertime, you could ride your bike, and just no major hassles or anything.
Well,
So
that's
yeah.
great. That's good to hear. Um, how did you feel about the winters?
I thought Detroit had some harsh winters, but my first winter in Marquette was totally different. I was coming back from Thanksgiving break. I think this was the first Thanksgiving break, and our vehicle broke down somewhere between. We had made it into the Upper Peninsula, but we were not quite in northern Michigan yet. I mean, in Marquette, we were maybe an hour and a half outside of Marquette. Oh wow! I thought that was the day that I was going to perish. I said, "I'm going to perish in a winter storm." It was brutal. But you know what happened? We ended up walking to someone's house. They let us in, and turned. The heat was on. We waited till the next day after the winter storm had passed, able to get the car started again, and made our way to Marquette. But that was probably the first time that I thought, "Wow, the winters in Marquette severe." However, you just have to prepare. So what I did, I got a better winter coat than the one I had, and I just adjusted. Got boots for it, and it wasn't a problem. But yeah, it was that winter storm that the vehicle broke down in, and we were walking trying to find someone's house because we just wasn't sure. I mean, we were out someplace, and we just took a chance and walked up to someone's house, and they were just so nice to let us in and
Oh,
let
wow.
us warm up until the next morning so that we can get our car going and get back to school.
Oh, that's a great story. Yeah, and that could be scary in the UP to just be abandoned or stranded. Some of the places are so remote, and you don't know what you're going to come up against.
Right.
And you knocked on the right door.
Yes. Well, yeah. Again, sometimes divine appointments just kind of work themselves
Again, yeah, God was looking out for you.
out.
No, I mean, I think Upers in general, regardless of their political stances and that, are really welcoming, kind people, and we know we got to take care of ourselves, and others, because at some point in time we're going to need that help.
That's right.
Because we've all been stuck in that situation before. Yeah, the thing is, you seem like you said it, you adapted. You were always a great adapter to things. Was that the case for a lot of other students who came up from Detroit that you knew? I mean, did they all adapt as well, or was it more challenging for some of them?
I mean, some of the students I came up with, kind of like what you had said earlier, some of them decided to return to Detroit, and they finished their education at Wayne State or another school, because I think perhaps they just wanted to, they came to Northern and just decided to do something different. So whereas there are some people who came in with me, like the gentleman I mentioned earlier, who I said I was going to graduate the day he graduated, he finished. I had another guy with me, and he's also in my fraternity. We came on the Greyhound bus together, and he also graduated from Northern. So it was just kind of one of those things. I think you said a very important word, adapting, and that has been something I've had to learn to do, for the better part of my life, learning how to adapt to the environment that I find myself in. And I just think that that's for especially if you're not from the Upper Peninsula, or I think adapting is a very important word for you to understand that that's a part of the experience. But as I said before, because of the willingness to adapt, people were willing to be helpful, I think.
That's a really great point. So, when you graduated, what happened? What'd you do? I mean, did you go right off to law school, or?
No. Well, first of all, my first job I had after law school was I worked for United States Senator Carl Levin in his Detroit office.
Oh, Carl.
Yes.
Uncle
Yes.
Carl. Yeah, it was sad to hear he passed.
Yes. Yes.
So
I was. I'm sorry, Dan. You were saying what?
No, go ahead. So you worked for Grad. This was after law school?
Right after law school.
Okay.
But
you went to Cooley Law School?
No. I didn't go to law school until 10 years later. So there's
okay.
there's some time between there, because between working for United States Senator Carl Levin, I ended up when I was also at Northern, I was also a resident assistant in Spooner Hall my second year, and John Frick was my hall director.
Right.
And he encouraged me. He encouraged me. He says, "Alphonso, you should really think about going into higher ed." Now, I think I may have told him that I was interested in law school, or whatever. But he told me that he thought that I would really make such a positive contribution in the area of higher education. So I decided to attend Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, as a hall director. And then also I pursued my master's of public administration while I was there. So that's where I ended up at Drake for about 3 years. Upon graduating from Drake University, my 3 years there as a hall director, I decided that indeed I was still more interested in more of the public administration law versus higher education. So I ended up finding several jobs with the state of Iowa. So I worked for the state of Iowa for about 6 years. I was in disaster services, natural resources, and then in the end, in the budget office. But then I still had this itch to go to law school. It just kept coming back. It just wouldn't leave me. And when I had the opportunity to attend law school in 1999, I ended up here. That's how I ended up in Lawrence, Kansas, because I attended the University of Kansas Law School, and then started working with HUD upon graduation from law school in 2002.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been so cool talking with you. It just brings back a lot of memories. That summer we spent together. It's too bad that we didn't get to spend more time together when we were in college after that.
Yes.
We were both RAs doing our own thing. But I'm like, gosh, I should have hung out with Alphonso more. He would have inspired me.
Well, hey, we're still living, Dan. There's no reason why we cannot still do things. Matter of fact, what I'll do is I'll send you my address and my cell phone number, because I would love to hear more. I would love to hear more about the center there, and just about more about northern Michigan in general. I would like to know more, and I would like to eventually come back up to Marquette just to visit. I would love to bring my family so that they can see the university, because I always tell my wife, I said, this is Northern Michigan it changes the trajectory of my life. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have had a successful military career, maybe would have gone through college through the, because I think the military has like a college assistance program, military assistance. If you want to go, you can take credits or whatever. Not to say that I may not have discovered it, but clearly Northern Michigan changed the trajectory, of my life, which I'm sitting here talking to you now. I'm not sure if I would be talking to you if it wasn't for that, as you say, that right, the right to try. They gave me the right to try, and for that, I will always be thankful to Northern Michigan for the
That's
right to try.
that's great. We'll end. I'm going to stop the recording there.